have it.
Okay, you record.
Yep, but the screen is visible?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. To kind of, Dagmar, just bring you up to what I've covered with Travis, could you give me an idea as to where you sit with pricing forms, how data is collected, and what the different type of variables are for collecting data?
Okay.
And we're just working with, we're just talking about wide format prints
Okay.
at the moment. Even though everything that we cover here is going to translate to all other products in the system.
Okay.
In terms of, for example purposes, we're just using wide format currently.
Okay.
So I think
well,
that
as far as pricing forms are concerned, it's more general information just from my old data set,
from
than the pricing forms.
okay, from um, the one from your previous company?
Yeah,
Okay.
from Imagine Group. I set up all those pricing forms pretty much. So different variables. You've got the check boxes
All right.
for yes, no, and pull down lists for selection lists and quantity fields, spinners, and memo fields, and
All right.
so I think I know those pretty well.
All right, then I definitely don't want to spend time on stuff that you know. So it looks like you've got experience working with both in the pricing form and within the variables themselves. You know the different types of variables and the different ways to input that data for collection on the pricing form. That's safe to say?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just all based on the old data set, really. The whole UDF part layout, that's really new for me.
Okay. That's good. That's fine.
Hey, Peter,
Uh-huh.
can you just kind of explain the different types of variables? Because that's an area that I'm kind of unclear on.
Sure. Okay, so the database that we'll be working out of is on SEER-IMP in this location, which is just Serious Control 5.1 Testing Peter control.exe. You can just navigate to that and send a shortcut to your desktop.
Okay.
Okay, so real quick, Dagmar, because this is gonna make things a little bit easier in that all OOBs are using the same products, same databases, generally the same pricing forms, the same selection list, etc. Everything's going to be uniform across the majority of systems that you're working on. So, and obviously that means that pricing forms generally, unless it's correcting one, there will be very little need to go into a pricing form and edit it, because that's just part of the OOB license. So while we are in pricing setup, there's an option over on the left under supporting components for variables, and this is where all variables have been predefined in the system. This is the value of all unoverridden variables, and an OOB customer cannot create new variables. So they have to work with what's here, and normally that works fine. Rob has set all this up, and there's very, very, very little need for a customer to need another variable, and in the case that they do, typically what we do is locate the type of variable that we need that's not currently being used on the product, and we reuse it for something else. Have you ever seen that, Dagmar, or does that make sense?
I have not seen it done yet.
Okay, so we just call this repurposing a variable. If we know, for example, if we look at a product and we look at the variables tab on that product, every single variable that has been predefined in the system, the unoverridden value of that variable exists on every single product. It's just that some of them may or may not be active on that particular product. And each product has the ability to customize the variable in its own use. So the value of a variable within a product may be very different from the way that that variable was defined in the setup, which is when you will see an overridden value. If the variable is unoverridden, it's just telling you that's the way it was defined, and it's never been changed since then. So specifically, if a customer may have a need, sometimes in implementation you may find that a variable to assign, for example, the value of a modifier to a variable, the system is easier and the system handles it better within formulas than to have to pull in the modifier value in the formula itself. So I see that quantity 2 is not being used in wide format prints and that it's a number type variable. We sometimes will go in, add that variable to the product, make a note of it as to what we're doing with it, and then that gives us the ability to use a number or list type variable or whatever type variable, additional variable within a product that it wasn't intentioned for. We just call that repurposing variables, and we'll go over some examples of a fairly common reasons why that may occur or why we might do that.
Peter, can you rename it in the product or no?
You can't. You cannot rename it, so you have to use it in the way that it was set up in OOB.
Okay. So just for my own clarification, say quantity 2 in this case used for wide format print as a a variable repurposing for say a modifier or something like that. That variable quantity 2 could be used in ADA currently with its original purpose.
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
So the variable being only, think of it in terms of a box to store data, and it's dynamic, so it means it can change within each pricing form, or the values of it can change with each pricing form. There are obviously different ways within a pricing form to collect that data. And Linda, this goes back to the types of variables. And so if we look at wide format printing, the first variable we see is a number value. So quantity is, let's say, first type of variable, a number. The next variable that we see is a list. So this is a variable created as sides drop, and the type of variable is a list, which means you can associate a selection list with that variable. These are also number variables, and then whenever we see a checkbox, this is the third type of variable, number list, and then true or false or yes, no. So the value of a checkbox is either always true or false, 1 or 0, 0 always being false. Anything else is true. The fourth kind of variable is image, which is just the ability to store an image file within the database. And the fifth kind of variable is, I don't remember the fifth.
The memo fields?
It's the text. Yeah, text. That's
Okay.
right. So the fifth one is text. So wherever we see a blank area where there is no drop down and it's a free floating field that you can type anything you want into it, it's going to be a text type variable.
So for your repurposing of a variable that's not used on a product, you would have to select the variable that has one of the types that you need for your particular scenario.
That's
so if
right.
you needed a list, you'd have to repurpose a list variable.
That's exactly correct.
Okay.
And you can even within customizable, if we have a variable that's not in use, that's defined as a variable type, you cannot change the type of variable on the product. It's always going to be a text variable or a number variable or whatever it was defined as. You certainly could go over to variable setup and change the value of it, but then you would have to be very careful because whatever you change the variable type to is going to cascade through the other products and potentially be disastrous. So you really don't want to, in an OOB scenario, change the variable type pretty much ever.
Because your product layouts and potentially pricing call not just for the variable name, but potentially the type of variable.
Absolutely. That's right. So if you, for example, let's say a product that is only cost, you're not going to have pricing methods active on that product. If you went and changed that variable to a number or anything other than a list, you would in effect destroy every product in Sirius. It'd be an easy way to fix it, but you would temporarily at least destroy every product in the system if you change this variable type, because it's critical to all pricing forms, and basically the data would disappear. This is being driven by list value, which is the area-based, cost-based selection list on all products.
So Peter, when we're working in an OOB licensed client system, you would not even have the opportunity to change the variable type, right? Because it would be locked down.
Actually, I'm not sure. I think, and I think all of our test systems are customizable. I think that you can edit the variable in variable setup, or I think you can edit the variable actually in variable setup. You cannot add a new variable, and you can't, but you can edit it. Now, if you edit a variable, for example, this variable pricing method, I could edit it in that I could assign a default list to the unoverridden value of pricing method, and that would still be okay because each product uses pricing method in an overridden way, in that each product is defaulting to a different type of pricing methods list, which is why Rob, when he set up this variable, he didn't default it to any list. If I did default it and save it, that really wouldn't hurt anything because each product is using this variable as a list that has been overridden. But if I change the variable type to something else, then it would destroy it. Because the variable type, whether overridden or not, is going to change on the product.
Okay.
This is something that... Sorry,
Dagmar.
The
whole issue of global versus affecting something locally.
That's right.
And if the variables are already overridden on each individual product, then your global change as far as choosing a different list isn't going to affect it because it's already overridden in the product. But changing the variable type obviously changes the whole system.
That's correct.
Okay.
It would change the nature of the variable, and it would just kind of blow things up. All right.
Okay. No, thank you for that explanation.
Sure. No. Just
sure of that.
ask me. Stop me if there's anything you don't understand.
One other thing. The save option. I know that's come up a couple times where you can save it in the product, but then if you need more information, you have to go and save it in the, I guess, global variable.
Oh, you mean the value of that variable?
Yes.
That would be something like in wide format prints, the image variable. Do we mean here?
Yes.
Yeah. Whenever a variable, the overwhelming majority of variables will be save option of quick save. But if you need this variable for reporting purposes, in other words, anything that's going to be used as a value within Crystal Reports, then the option would be to, why is that not letting me override? That's weird. But the option would be save extra information for reporting and enhance search capabilities. One variable that comes to mind would be machine. There is a report in the system by machine, and that report will not work unless machine is switched to save extra information. I wonder why that is. Edit mode, override. There we go. All right, so here's an example of this. Apparently, this has to be set on the global setting as well. You'll notice that I can edit portion of this variable. There are other portions I can't, such as the type and the save options. So that makes me know now for a fact an OOB user can edit the variable. They can change the list. They can change the variable type, and they can save that. Set that save option here. It's set as quick save on every variable because this will take longer to save the pricing form. But whenever that data value is being used for reporting purposes, Linda, that's where this setting is.
Okay.
And
I've seen that happen before, and wasn't quite sure why, but you would have to go into the global setting to get it to save.
That's correct. One case where that occurs frequently is in service tickets. If you want the service address to print on the header of the service ticket, then the variable for the for the service address has to be set to save extra information. By default, it's set to quick save. So that's one place where we've seen it before, and there's been others.
Okay, very good. I got it, I think.
All right. So the next thing, let me just get that out of the way. The next thing that I want to just make sure that everyone is clear with is if we look at an order, and we just created this order on Monday. Oh, and Travis is in it. So, no. Sorry. Travis isn't in it. Oh, yeah, he is. He is logged in as administrator, so I'm just going to clone this. Dagmar, I'm pretty sure that you're going to know more about this than I do, because this has always been an issue that has always made me pull out either a sketch pad or Photoshop in order to visually see this. But you understand number vertical, number horizontal, and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, in general, the layout was a little bit different, I think, on ours, but yeah.
Okay. If we're looking at an image, let's say a 48 by 96, and we're looking at it at a height of 48 inches and across or a width of 96.
Mm-hmm.
And our image height and width is 18 by 24. Number per utilization means that we can get 18 on 148 by 96. Would you say that's correct?
Well, you can get two 24s up in the, if you're in 48 and you're using 18 inches of the board plus whatever scrap.
Yeah.
So you'd get two up basically.
Which is what the two vertical is.
Vertical is.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And
that's for the board part, because not necessarily for the vinyl you're printing on, no.
No, correct. It is for it would be for the image itself, the vinyl on the board. We're talking 2 up for horizontal.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? Now I'm going to ask you to explain something to me that I'm a little bit unclear about.
Sure.
That for horizontal. So again, we're looking at the board as if we're looking over it, and it's standing on its edge, and it's 48 inches high, 96 across.
Mm-hmm.
That means 2 vertical. Does that mean we have an 18 by 24 image, one stacked on top of the other, and 4 across?
Yeah. So what you have is if you're looking at it, they're basically going to be 18 inches wide by 24 tall.
Mm-hmm.
Across the board. So you have two up on the board, and then you've got 2 more next to each other to fit it in. So you're going to be using 36 in, but the whole width of the 48 inches of the board.
Which would be the 24 plus the 24, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we had
in other words, like the two 24s are on the 48
size. Yes.
Yeah.
And the 18 are on the 96.
Okay. All right. And if we had any gap in between those, then that would change the layout in that we couldn't have 2 up.
Yeah. See, what we did
That's correct.
because we knew we needed a 1/2 inch for cutting, we resized unless it had to fit in the frame, and we just would make them 23.5.
Got it. Got it.
So, yeah.
All right.
Now, is the gap automatically figured here?
It's not automatic, but it would affect the layout. It is there.
Because isn't it?
Oh no,
isn't it set on the machine basis?
Yes and no. It is on. No, it's actually not in the layout. There is a default gap that you can set on cutters, but
isn't that just for the roll vinyl, the flat stock?
Oh, sorry, yes,
flat for the board. There's nothing set for a gap.
That's right.
But if we had set a gap for 1 on height, then it's going to then change the layout that you can't get 2 up and 4 across.
That should be correct.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I got it.
And that's
right. So you changed it. That's it. Okay.
Yeah, we had all this capability in the system, but production didn't actually look at it. So we would adjust up on the front end instead, but it's all there for you. So
yeah, and that's really not uncommon.
Your scrap is really increased a lot too, because you can't use the whole board.
Exactly.
And here
That
it's
makes
nice
sense.
because it's essentially on the main screen, and we had to go a layer deeper to look at that stuff, which was another reason why we didn't really utilize it.
Yeah. So
Okay.
on the pricing form, on the work order, this information can print out, and I'll just mention it because Travis mentioned it, that when he asked me about it. By default, the layout info is not printing.
Okay.
It is a user constant that you can set on or off to print that data. All right.
Right.
So I wanted to clarify that it's always so yeah, where we could get eight images previously, we can only get 6 now, so it increases
Right.
scrap.
Right.
All right. In part usage. On this pricing form, first, let me before we go into part usage, whether we're looking at area-based or cost-based pricing, are we comfortable how this number is being generated? 619.51, the pre-tax price.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, I mean, conceptually, yes.
Okay.
How we get there.
In
How
cost-based
to
pricing
affect
is
it, how to affect it, that's the other part with the multipliers. That's new to me, really, with OOB, really, because we did area based.
okay. So and I don't know how the old database did it. I don't remember. In cost base, it's just what it is. It's the part cost and the multiplier, and then we're going to go back to the part cost a minute because we're always talking about fractions of a cost. And in area-based pricing, the price is driven solely from a retail set on the material plus charges associated with the machines. And
So Peter, for area-based, it's the material, and then the settings on the machine, and labor is not really considered for area.
that's right.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and we did the area based just on material, and we ignored both equipment and labor.
Well, it's not so much that. Well, did y'all not track cost?
We did track costs, and
Okay.
but it was all based on material, really, and just some labor, but not not production labor per se.
Yeah. Well, in area base, in terms of not really tracking labor, etc., you really are in a way, because if you're looking at your margin and you have a set square foot price, that margin is incorporating, at least within OOB, that margin is incorporating machine and labor costs. And what we really need to know is our square foot price returning the necessary margin that we need to make money, to cover our overhead and clear a profit. So we're not looking at it specifically, but we are looking at it in the overall picture. And so in area-based pricing, in this simple example, that $223.70 is the base price, and the base price is always in reference to the printing plus the machine, the printer multiplier setting. So when we see that the resolution multiplier affects a percentage on the base price, which is what it does, it doesn't look at the overall price, it looks at the base price. That 10% increase is just an increase on the price of printing the image. Would not take the lamination and the mounting into consideration when applying that 10% increase.
Okay.
And I always mention to people that there are numerous pricing options within Control, but that they are pricing options, and if you want to simplify things, you don't necessarily have to use them. So, and I had this scenario yesterday where if a customer tells you we sell this product for X number of dollars a square foot, then you really cannot use cost-based pricing. It has to be a variation of area-based, because costing is never going to return the same square foot price, because anything can alter it. Even in a situation where area-based price is used, $5.59 a square foot, but if we change the height of this image, then my square foot price changes to $7.46. So bear in mind that this is going to drive some users nuts, and there's only one way to avoid that. They have to understand that what's happening is whenever we change the height or the size of an image, the ratio of printed area against scrap area is always changing. And so on that part, their only option is, if they want to avoid that, is to remove one-time setups, remove scrap charges, and make sure that their square foot price is covering these associated prices or charges, or really
So essentially, they're really building in their $5, their scrap, and their setup charges. Really.
And that is what most people do,
Yeah,
or have been doing.
Yeah. Or they kind of pick a number out of the air. They know they're making money on it. They may not know specifically what their scrap is or their setup is.
That's correct.
They just know that they have priced it at a level that they are making money.
And
but if they set up the cost side, then they would have that data so that they know really
exactly
what their scrap is.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So if yes.
How does that affect larger quantities then? Because we had this scenario, but then we created lookup tables to discount at larger square footages, basically.
You would still
finishing.
Yeah, you would still have to do that. There is no other mechanism within area-based pricing to handle that. And even if you had one-time charges set up, yes, the unit price would come down when being divided by quantity, but it still probably would not be enough in terms of a discount for true competitive discount pricing. You'd still have to set up a discount table or a lookup table, whichever one you're using. But the point being that if they're coming from that background and that scrap is squaring them off, is throwing them off, I don't think that there's anything improper with explaining to them, what's happening. And if you want to make this easy, just set a single square foot price on your substrates, in which case that's always going to return the square foot price that you are looking for. We set $5.50 a square foot. Ounce 54 matte, 550.
So is it the machine then, the resolution?
Yeah, but I thought I set it to production. I think I did override the. I did override that value. Yep. There we go. All right. So in this case, then our price, our square unit, no matter what size, quantities, is going to stay at $5.50 until we introduce discounts. But this gives them total control over that square foot price, which is what many of them want.
Now that part is really the part that I was familiar with, and I've been trying to wrap my head around about the multipliers and what is affecting the price per square foot, or just trying to get my head around it. So that's the basis why I started. So this will be much easier for me going forward now.
Okay. And we're going to talk now specifically about cost and fractions of cost and how this is being. So material is really straightforward. The usage of material is based on whatever the pricing form is saying that it's being used. Where it gets complicated a little bit is in the estimated usages of machines. And for me, it was really important and cleared up a ton of stuff once I understood what was happening on machine level. And that's where I was. That's where we ended up covering with Travis. And all right, in this scenario, we're using the printing, the cutting, and the lamination side of things. And for this particular job, whatever it was, 4 18 by 24s on a substrate, these are the returned machine times. Do you understand where these times come from?
Mm-hmm.
Or how to look up those times?
Yeah. I mean, you've got the equipment and how fast it prints at whichever resolution.
That's right. That's all it is.
Got the cutting speed based on the equipment you're cutting it on, and the thickness and whatever of the material, and then the laminator and how much it can, how much material has to lead in and out, and how quickly it laminates.
That's correct.
That's 190 minutes for lamination. Is that realistic?
That looks crazy. It's overkill now on that one.
It's probably the thing is that I left Travis with Travis has probably gone in and has played with this.
Okay, because I guess some of my lack of knowledge of what would be a realistic time and realistic numbers, I wouldn't be able to say, immediately look at something and say, yeah, that's definitely off. Now, I'm sure over time I would learn that, but that's really, I think, where my hang-up would be. I maybe would go to the parts list, but I wouldn't be able to visually see where do I need to tweak, what looks off.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what amazes me, Peter, when I watch you and I watch Rob do that, because it's just like, okay, how did you know that?
Well, I kind of think that first of all, those numbers really potentially could be different from user to user.
Right.
And I think you, Linda, immediately saw this. And if we look in comparison with the other times in the system, I mean, clearly there's something.
That to me looked like, wow, that looks like there's something wrong. If it only takes 18 minutes to print it, but it's taking you over an hour and a half to laminate, it just seems like really crazy. So that's an obvious one, but some of the other ones aren't as obvious to me.
Yeah, and
I
that's
guess it's just a matter of training.
Yeah, and
even I don't even know. I just know I've never timed it, but I've just seen it done. So, you're right. It just jumps out, but I wouldn't have an exact number either.
And this kind of goes back to where some of the users have problems because the person being assigned to implement Sirius doesn't know what these numbers are either and can't get communication from production because production's the last people who want to change to another software, and and they're kind of stuck here too, which is why I always just tell them ignore those numbers for now and wait till we're generating estimates and then look at specifics and pull a production manager in at that point and say, what kind of times are we looking at here? In this case, on the seal part, in order to set this example for Travis, for him to understand the equation, I just set it to 1 foot per hour so we could easily see what the result
Right.
was.
Right. Okay.
It would really be, I think the default is 180.
Fraction. Yeah.
So
Okay.
if we look at this 18 minutes on the equipment, which is the equipment directly is what creates the labor. So labor is always a either 100% or a fraction of equipment time. If we look at this 18 minutes and the customer tells you, oh, that's too high or too low or doesn't make any sense, and you go back to the part and you see, okay, in standard mode, it's X number of square feet an hour, and you divide your square footage by that speed, and the number looks off. Do you know how to find where on the product this 18 minutes is being calculated?
Well,
It's on the
on
UDF,
the part
right?
itself. Yeah, on the part UDF for the printer.
That's where the value of the machine is, but there has to be an equation somewhere that is doing the math for this part. So,
Oh, you mean on the part tab on the product where it calculates?
yeah,
Where it has a formula of how it's consuming.
exactly.
No, I don't know that.
So we're really just talking about the variable, and this was another one that once I understood what was happening here, it opened up a lot of understanding overall in the system. The machine, Muto, is associated with a variable currently, and that variable is large format printers. If we look at the product.
Hey, by the way, I needed to interrupt because I do have another training coming up in a few minutes.
Okay. At 10?
With Rob. Yeah, I have a
okay.
client with Rob.
We'll wrap this up in right now. If we look at large format printers, this is the variable that holds that value, and we see the consumption is print time. It's referencing another variable for the consumption, and print time is equal to this. And the important thing.
How did you get to the debugger?
That's Control Alt Spacebar.
Okay.
Forget that one.
Yeah, it's always amazing how quickly you get there. Okay. So you just drop the formula in there, and then it'll evaluate what it is on this order?
Yes.
Okay.
That's right.
Or on that line item, whatever you have open.
On the line item, that's correct.
Okay.
And so the basic equation is the print area in unit area divided by the list price value on large format resolution. The list price value of large format resolution is this is really a very cool selection list that Rob made, and within the price column of the selection list, he is actually pulling the value of that UDF into the price field on the selection list. And so the equation is looking on the selection list and is actually pulling in this line of code into that equation. So the actual the actual print area is being divided by this function, part UDF by variable name, set this on production. Part UDF by variable name, and this is what we'll pick up with, is extremely common in the system. It's how any nature or detail of a part is being pulled, and what it just means is the variable name large format printer holding the UDF of printer Res1 print speed. This is the 250 is just the default. That value of 183 is what's being divided into the print area, and that value is coming from right there. Part UDF by variable name, UDF name, and the default is what's allowing us to pull a specific value UDF from a part, specifically a part associated with that variable. And I know you got to go, Dagmar. That's what we will pick up with, and see how that relates to other cost on the pricing form or the particular product on Friday.
Great.
Anything comes to mind, feel free to ask.
Thanks so much.
Okay, you're welcome, Dagmar and Linda.
Thanks, Dagmar. Pierre, can we just go back to this again? I'm just trying to wrap my old brain around this.
Absolutely.
Okay, and forgive me, but I learn better if I kind of restate it back in my own words so that I understand it.
No, I totally understand that.
So, what we're saying in evaluating the machine consumption of 18 minutes in that example, what we're looking at to see the breakdown of how that 18 minutes is applied, we have to go to the part and pull that formula out for the resolution.
Yeah, we basically first really in the large format printer, we have to find out that, remember, the large format printer is what's given us the 18 minutes. So if we look at the printer and we look at the consumption formula on that printer, it references another value, another variable, print time. So we have to now kind of jump over and say, what does print time say?
I gotcha. So in other words, it's a variable embedded within a variable.
That's right. And that really is done for the sake of writing formulas and shortening them, because now, I mean, you could technically, every time that you reference a machine speed, you could go in and type all of this and it would work exactly as referencing the single variable name of price time. So obviously, when you're setting up a product, you kind of have to think ahead of yourself and say, you know, what are the variables that are we going to need and frequently call up? And if you assign a formula to that variable, then within other variables, you can just pull up that formula by a single variable name.
Right, right, right. So what the product is doing, it is looking to the large format printer's variable, and then it is pulling in the print time variable that has the full formula in it.
That is correct.
And it's returning a value based on the resolution that you've put in for print time.
That's right. And that could have been done a number of ways, and this is really an example of where Rob really kind of blows my mind, in that the entire formula, I mean, the way that the formula is used in this product, 99% of the time is really only this part of it and this part of it. The rest of it is checking to see if it's an alternate print method. But it really comes down to this. And what I find, what I in the use of selection lists, they're also a really insane way. Absolutely. I mean, the things you can do with them are just nuts. And so in this case, you have 4 different resolutions. Now, Rob could have written this formula in such a way where it was
it's this, right.
Right, but instead he's pulling the list price value, which means the selection list associated with large format resolution. There's a column called price, which is the list price value. And so whatever resolution is selected, that is what's being, that line of that UDF value that is in the list price value is what's being.
I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I see it. It's really ingenious, because what he has done is, and just evaluating, just making a sentence, an English sentence out of that formula. It's saying, take whatever your roll area in units is, go look at the selection list for resolution for large format printers, and whatever the variable is selected in resolution on the pricing form, return that value.
That's correct. And, you know, think, and as cool as that is, if you take a look at a product like either textile or composition signs, and I'm just going to stick with composition
You're going to blow
signs.
my mind. I already got this part.
No, we're not. I'm not going to go into it. I'm actually commenting back to what we saw with Syntec. All right, that product is so complicated that in the end, what I found and what I wrote up in the OOB Dev ticket, the only process that was not looking at the part or at the include labor or add setup part time, the only process was finishing. And, you know, to give Rob the benefit of the doubt, you know, they don't know this at Syntec, but that he only missed finishing with regards to how this product is set up is really kind of amazing in itself. You know, I understand that the customer, you know, that's really not their thing. They don't need to know that, and the bottom line is it has to work. But that he, you know, after, I'm talking about going through layers of formulas, referencing lists. It was just, you know, it was just crazy that that was the only thing missing. Is kind of very interesting. One of the most potent commands in formulas that we're going to see a lot is this one. And when I understood this concept, this really opened up the whole formula thing to me. And
so let's pull this apart a minute. What that phrase means is, go to the part UDF and pull a piece of that. So if you're looking at resolution, it would pull out resolution. Is that correct?
It basically is, yeah, no, it's generally correct. The part UDF is a type of UDF, and there's tons of them by variable name. So there is a part, let's say, in roll stock material, and it's the print vinyl 3M.
Mhm.
So how do we know what the width of this material is, or how does the system know it?
Mhm.
And the format would then be to call
Material width,
comma.
right? Would it be?
No, this one would just be the roll stock material, the variable itself,
Okay.
which is this, print vinyl 3M.
Mhm.
Then comma, quote, substrate width, and that may be a wrong UDF name, but
Okay.
we'll fix that. And then a default value.
So you're saying there that you want to go to the material on this line item, look at the width of it to evaluate what
Yeah, and
is set for that UDF.
And you would need this, you would need that to either troubleshoot a consumption issue or just working within the formula itself. This is where this tab is valuable. So I really need to know what is the name of the UDF before anything. I could go look on the layout, but
Right.
the customer doesn't have access to that layout. So instead, I'm just going to look at it here, and I'm basically just going to scroll down until I see values. So substrate roll width, right?
Oh, okay, gotcha.
All right, so if I look back on that order,
yep. Mhm. And then the one means what in that phrase?
The one means if there is no value in this UDF, return a 1. And so, for example, if an equation is being divided by part UDF by variable name, and you have either no default or 0 here, and there is no value in here, it's going to return an error because you cannot divide anything by a 0. So
gotcha.
to be safe, to avoid any error messages or breakdowns, we would insert a 1 here so that the equation would always be true, whether or not there's a value in here.
Right. So this is returning that the client set up this width on this material for 54.
That's
and
right.
This is just a way of checking that. So if you're looking at an elaborate formula and you need to evaluate a piece of it, you could do it this way.
That's exactly right. And then just when this concept of the really the power that the system has by being able to use this type of function in an equation is just huge,
Right.
And this is really limitless in that even though we can't edit a layout form within a pricing a UDF form, we're not limited in how many UDFs we can create. So, for example, a customer may say something that comes up sometimes frequently, it's never really critical, but a customer may say to you, they have to know, they want to throw a flag when the width of the image is wider than the width of the laminate. Well, the system doesn't know that because no UDF calls for that laminate width. Now, I can go in here and say user-defined field setup. As an OOB user, I don't have access to this. I do have access to this, though.
Right.
And so I can say add a UDF called lam width, and it's going to be a number. and I want it for materials only. Oh, goodness, lost my screen. And save it. Okay. Now, whenever you add a UDF, you have to log out.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to do this because it'll only take a second. It'll be worth it.
Sorry, I ask a lot of questions.
No,
so
no, no.
I love learning stuff like this. This is up my my alley. I love just digging in and learning stuff like that.
To me, this is you know, you got to kind of take the good with the bad. I'm not the best people person in the world, and you know, and some days, like anyone, I don't feel like talking to people, but I never get tired of doing this. You know.
Peter, for a person that's on the phone talking to people all day.
Well, that's why I said you got to take the good with the bad.
I've always been like that. That's, I guess, why I went into accounting. I'm very much a numbers person and logical thinking kind of thing.
You know, some days
I have to restate things so that I get it. That's how I learn.
That's the way I learn as well. That's the way I think most people learn, whether they like it or not. But, you know, some days you're looking at the clock and the day can't go by fast enough. I have had days like that, and at the end of the day, a product issue comes up or a formula issue. I literally forget that I was looking at the clock and easily stay there till 8:30 that night working on that issue.
Oh, I know. You do that a lot.
Because then it becomes something really fun for me.
Mm-hmm.
I know it wouldn't be for everybody, but
no, actually, I'd be like that. I very much, if I have a puzzle or some kind of thing that I have to figure out, I just get lost in it.
Yep, and you know it's like doing anything enjoyable. When you're enjoying it, the time just flies by, whether it's a video game or anything. All right, so if we're looking at this laminate now.
Mm-hmm. And you added that UDF, but it didn't show up on the layout.
It won't show up there, but it would show up here.
Right.
All right, and I could categorize it to find it easily, but I didn't do that.
Yeah,
so we're just looking at the values.
I understand the mechanics of this screen and what you just did. I understand that. I think it was at the end. Wasn't it all at the end? I thought it was the last one on the right side.
Oh, you may be right. I didn't see it.
I thought I saw it.
You're right. All right.
There it is.
So here, for example, I've done this. I've also, a customer sometimes will say they need 3 or more printer resolutions. Oh, you can do that. That's not a problem.
So in other words, again, I have to restate it. Because you can't affect the layout on the UDFs, you can create the UDF, and then you're going to now incorporate that into the consumption formula so that it'll look at the lam width and not return a value if it doesn't work, right?
That's right. So remember, the thing here was the customer tells you they want to be able to throw a flag when the image.
Right.
Previously, we had no way to identify what the width of the laminator was, but we added part UDF and the variable name is front lamination.
Right.
The UDF name was
lam hyphen width.
Yep.
So now you're pulling that in. Okay.
And so now we have the
That's
ability to
54,
reference
right.
that 54 inch. So we could say something like, if
Did you take a computer language course or something like that so that you understand how to do these statements?
in college I neither minored nor anything in computer science, but I did take several computer elective courses. And back then, the programming languages were the common ones were Fortran,
Yeah, I
Pascal,
took Fortran.
and
I took
COBOL.
Fortran like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
but God,
the
I
one
can't
that
remember
stuck
it.
with me, and the one that that CFL kind of is similar to is Pascal. So I literally had forgotten the overwhelming majority of that stuff until I got back into doing this sort of thing.
Okay.
And that just kind of jogged my memory.
Yeah.
It's very,
Well, when
very
you
similar.
work in it, you'll remember it, But
Right.
I mean, like I said, I took Fortran probably 30 years ago.
That's right. Well, mine wasn't quite that long, not that far off, but I took just as electives Fortran, Pascal, and COBOL. I may also take an RPG, I think, which was.
So we're saying here we're looking at the material roll width on that part.
Yeah. So we say if it's greater than. If the substrate roll width is greater than part UDF front lamination lam width, then um, now where I added that okay, it would normally just be a blank.
Okay.
So now that we have a way to track what the lamination width is, you could add a formula warning within the pricing form that if the roll width is greater than the lamination width, we should probably say if the roll width is greater than or equal to, then lamination needs to be wider.
Now, where would that come up? Say you did add this to this client's system. Where would that come up, that message?
In the product, you have the ability to add either a warning or an error. The error, I believe it functions differently in that it won't let you out of the pricing form until you correct it. A warning will just throw a warning. So
let you know.
If we add that as an error, edit this.
Okay, very cool.
Sorry, that's Travis is in that one. All right, so let's say that we're setting this order up, and we have a 54-inch
material. Yep.
material.
And 54 there.
Yeah,
Let's say we select them our laminates less.
Right? Yeah, actually, let's say
say
our width is greater than our laminate, so our width is 60 inches.
60. Okay.
You click OK. Lamination needs to be wider.
How very
and it won't let you beyond that until you correct it.
Very cool.
To where if it was under 54, greater than, well, see, but this is where greater than or equal to, this is where
Oh, it's the substrate roll width, though. It's not the. It's the substrate
Oh,
roll width.
that's right. That's right. So
So we're not looking at what the specs are on the order. We're just looking at
all
the
right.
substrate.
So actually,
so if your substrate roll width was.
actually, what I'm just going to do is say image height.
Yeah, that would make more sense. I understand what you're doing here.
Yep.
Though.
I mean, that's really just very basic stuff there.
Right, but it's a way to within OB help a client with maybe some specific circumstances that they want.
You know who this is kind of where this kind of thing comes up is one customer that I clearly remember this with was and always asking about this kind of stuff was Seinzu Toad, because it reminds me of something, but let me just verify this. All right, so if we look at this now, the width is less than the lamination. So it's saying okay, but it's really not an error. And then if it's 55, it should say you get the gist
That's
of that.
okay. I
Okay.
understand what you're trying to do here, so we don't have to troubleshoot it, but I understand exactly what.
Oh,
the
wait, I'm
demonstrations
sorry.
were.
It's this. But see, that's also the thing. If you start doing that, then you really, if you're OCD like me, you get obsessed with it and you can't let it go until you finish it. Kyle is much the same way, incidentally. I found out.
Dear. I kind of probably would be like that too. So I can't. I'm laughing because I'm laughing at myself too. I'd be like that too.
So image width is greater, lamination needs to be wider, or of course image width less. Okay, that's the way it would work. So
now you can rest in peace, right?
yeah. Kyle had a call with Todd last week, and so they went back to using their old database, right?
Right, we knew that, right?
Yeah, and so Kyle did not want a call, was not looking forward to the call because he knew, everyone knows the disaster that is Seinzu, and so I got with Kyle and I said, look, this is what happened with him, and if he makes sure to charge them for anything they want if they don't have any time, because everything is a product of both their creation and the fact that he consciously made a decision to go back to that broken database. And so the call was all about the fact that they couldn't get something to work because they had turned off all the variables in a way to dumb the system down. In other words, they hard coded certain parts for lamination and stuff where they just didn't want the salespeople to have to make a choice.
Right.
Now, could you imagine going through life not having to make a choice? To me, if I have people working for me, I want them to at least know the basics. I shouldn't have to tell somebody that if my image width is 60 inches, my laminator has to be at least 60 inches, my lamination. You can't take all of the decision making out of the process.
No.
And that's what they tried to do. But apparently back to Seinzu, they're having problems again, and it goes back to the basic issue that is their data set is completely destroyed.
And the basic issue that Todd's an idiot.
Mm-hmm. Well, that goes too.
Oh, I don't know. I early on, I think and you knew it before me, that he was not a good manager. He does not have faith in his people. He doesn't really understand how things work, and just really just uses the defense of complaining and whining instead of fixing things. We learned that very early on. So
Well, but this wasn't the first time Seinzu had been through startup. They
I
had
know
been
that.
through it
I know.
before with Larry. Larry's no longer there, but and Larry fully understood what was going on, and he took full blame, not blame, but he fully admitted that he knew they destroyed their database, but that the guy wasn't there anymore, partly because of that and so forth. And I told him, just because we had a fairly good relationship, that I said, I don't think that you could have taken a 5-year-old kid and told them, unlock the system and told them to go in there and just do as much destruction as they could, and it would be worse than it is right now.
Yeah.
So you really have no option but to get a new database. And they did. They upgraded 3 or 4 years ago. They ended up doing the exact same thing.
Yeah. I don't know. Oh, well. Well, thank you so much for the training today. I'm really, really enjoying it, and I'm glad I'm part of it.
Well, I'm going to send you
I've done this. I know OOB, and I've been working in this for such a long time, but I never really had a good understanding of the background mechanics. I just would kind of ping Rob, well, how does this work and how does that work? So this is very, very valuable for me to do with not even just the startup stuff, just troubleshooting my own data set ideas and problems.
Yeah, in an effort not to waste time and go over things that people know, I mentioned to Travis, if you know something, let me know. I realize working with multiple people that scenario somewhat changes, but in the way I have envisioned going over this, I've tried. I'm trying to do it in a way that where, all right, before we can go into selection list properties and all of that, this has to be known. A has to be known before B can be covered, and so that's what I'm trying to do. I'll send you an outline of this. I kind of cleaned it up last night, and just to kind of see. I think that once we cover digital format, and digital printing, and then the difference between this and cut vinyl in the way that cut vinyl is handled, I don't know why they would not be able to take digital
well, the plan is get Travis and Dagmar up to speed for digital. They are running the calls, like they're the me on the call, and they're running the calls and the tickets and all that thing. What I'd like them to do is start being the imp on the calls as well. Have Rob still sitting on the calls to help them so that it's not a bad experience for the client if they don't understand or prolong anything. So have Rob there, but really have Rob take a more backseat role. And once we get a sense that they can handle the basic questions and the more routine things, then maybe not have Rob on those calls anymore.
Well,
that
would end up allowing them to take their own calls.
Exactly.
Freeing up Rob's time and hopefully being able to respond quicker to the customer needs. That's what I would like to see, is to where
Yeah, that's the goal. That's where we're heading with this part of it, and then once they have those down, then we'll expand to the other products.
You know,
But for the time being, you and I are going to be the more complex products, not really feed Rob any of those because of just Travis and Dagmar handling the digital ones.
yeah.
And then eventually we'll add products in.
Once they have experience with digital, and there has to be some basic and some fundamental intelligence there. With Dagmar, I was confident, I was comfortable that she has it. With Travis, I didn't know. I just didn't know.
Right.
And when I say didn't know, I don't mean that negatively, in that he did
No,
something that implied
right.
that he didn't. I just hadn't worked with him, but he does. And you know, in the two conversations I've had with him, any doubt as to whether or not he'll be able to pick this up is kind of gone. I know that he has the intelligence to do it.
Right. Perfect. No, this is awesome. All right. I have an OOB meeting to go to. I know you have the webinar coming up. I did not see the OOB ticket for all the ADA stuff you found.
Oh,
Did you create that ticket?
I did.
Where is it?
Can you see my screen?
Yeah. I don't know. I quickly looked for it this morning and I couldn't find it.
I'll send you the ticket
I thought it
number.
would be under review. Okay.
Look for it. It's under Syntec, actually.
It's under their client.
Do you see my control?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. Take a moment to refresh. May have to restart it. I'm not sure what's happening here. I'll send you the ticket
I'll
number
look
in
for
just